Hey, this is Joe from HomeStudioCorner.com. Got another PreSonus Studio One video for you. In the last video, we looked at the browse window that comes up over on the right-hand side. Today, I want to look at the inspector window that comes over on the left. A couple ways to get there. You can click on this little I for information, or inspector, that makes more sense. Or you can also hit F4 on the keyboard and it'll pop it open. If you had asked me when I first started using Studio One if the inspector window would be something I would use on a regular basis, I would have said, no, of course not. It looks kind of nerdy. There's a lot of numbers. It's not very intuitive. I would much rather look at the mix window and make my plugin adjustments here, right? Or whatever else I need to do. Well, that's true, but I found I use this thing all the time. So let's quickly go through some of the things that I use. I may have shown some of this in a previous video, but I want to dedicate this one to this in case you need to come back and find it later. So the things that I mainly use on this, just so you can see what's here. One of the things, your groups, if you have some tracks grouped together. So by the way, this follows whatever track you have selected, so it's always showing you what you want to see. So let's say we want all these drum tracks grouped together. I can hit Command G and they're grouped, and you can see, okay, they're set in group 2. I can rename the group if I want to. I can take them out of the group. I can do all sorts of things, switch groups. It's all right there so I can see what's happening there. Also, if there are layers. So in this particular session, we recorded several tracks of drums. So let me make sure they're all grouped together. Okay, I think they're grouped now. And if I switch between the layers, you can see the different takes will pop up over here. There they are, popping up. Hope I didn't mess this song up. I hope not. Okay. So that's where you find layers. It's called takes in Pro Tools, but they're layers here. So it took me forever to find them. So this is where it is. So if you recorded, say, let's come down here and say this vocal track here. We've recorded a take. We want to record a new take. Just completely new take and hide this one. We would come over here, click on layer, and then it gives you lots of options to duplicate everything that's there to a new layer. If you're wanting to make just a couple changes to what's there and preserve the original, you can add a blank layer and you can rename the one that's there. I'll do that sometimes if it's helpful. Instead of it being called layer 1, layer 2, that's helpful, and you can remove it. So that's where you get to that. It's the only place I know of to get to it. So it's over here in the inspector window. Delay, never use this. If you want to delay a specific track without actually dragging and moving it, you can do that. Let's see, what else do I use? I don't use any of this much, but over here is kind of neat. This is, if you watch Dave Pensato mix, or a lot of people who mix in Pro Tools, they'll usually mix all in the edit window. They won't really go to the mix window all that often. And when they're making adjustments, remember in Pro Tools how you can have like the plugins will show up next to the tracks, and you can adjust volume and plugins and sends all here in the edit window. You can kind of do the same thing with the inspector window here. It's all adjustable, and you can change the size to show what you want to see, which is super cool. But as you can see here, this is essentially the channel strip for this particular track. So we can adjust volume, panning, all the stuff, plugins and sends are all right here available to us. It's really helpful if you're just in the middle of a mix and you're mainly looking at this window, but you just want to see what's happening on a given track. You can do that very quickly and easily. And it helps you kind of not be distracted by all the other tracks in the session, and you can just see what's going on here at a glance without having to always open up the mix window and close it back. Okay? And then down here, this is kind of event-based effects down here, meaning if you want to take a single piece of audio and select a piece of audio and then apply some sort of effect to it, you can do that here. Now there's a couple things. The one I use the most is actually over here. I've shown this before, the transpose feature. Let's take these cool background vocals at the beginning. Let's see, let me mute the lead. So let's say for some reason we wanted to transpose those down a whole step. We would select them all, come over here in the inspector, hit -2, and then now it has some artifacts. It's not meant to be pretty, but if you're using this to maybe take something down an octave for some sort of effect, then it's kind of fun. I do this a lot with things like kick drums or snare drums. If I want to duplicate it, take it down an octave to add some thickness to blend in with the original, this is where you do that. You can also tune things up and down by, I think this is set to cents. So if you have something that's just a little bit flat in one spot, you don't want to go through the whole Melodyne process, you can do that here. Fade in, fade out, I don't use any of this, but I do use the normalize and the gain feature here. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just to get it to max volume before clipping, you can select it and click normalize. And then you can adjust the gain. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just to get it to max volume before clipping, you can select it and click normalize. And then you can adjust the gain. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just to get it to max volume before clipping, you can select it and click normalize. And then you can adjust the gain. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just to get it to max volume before clipping, you can select it and click normalize. And then you can adjust the gain. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just to get it to max volume before clipping, you can select it and click normalize. And then you can adjust the gain. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just to get it to max volume before clipping, you can select it and click normalize. And then you can adjust the gain. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just to get it to max volume before clipping, you can select it and click normalize. And then you can adjust the gain. So if you want to normalize a piece of audio just and you watch the audio jump up pretty loudly. That's one way to do it. You can hit Command N, or Option N rather. We'll do the same thing. And then if you want to just adjust the gain of a piece of audio, you can do that here. You've seen that before, but you may not have known it shows up right here. So you can see exactly what the gain is. Excuse me. And if you wanted to type that in specifically, instead of trying to drag it so slowly so you get the exact thing, let's say I wanted to turn all these down 3 dB. I can just select them, click over here, and type in -3, and it'll do it for me, as opposed to me having to drag it in ever so precisely. And then bend markers here. This is just tells you if you want to see the bend markers if you're doing some of that time stretching stuff, which we're not in this session, and I rarely use that either. So those are the things I like to use over in the inspector window. The one other thing, back to the event-based effects, excuse me, if you want to apply a particular effect to just a single piece of audio on a track. So let's say we wanted to apply some heavy distortion just to this phrase of this vocal track. We would select it, come over here and click Enable on Event Effects, and then we can come in here and select whatever plugin we want. So the red light district distortion plugin, we can set it up, listen to it, all that stuff. And then that effect would only happen on this piece of audio and not the entire track. It's helpful for a single sound effect that you want, or if you're doing some sort of Foley or sound for film and you need a specific reverb but just on one specific part. It makes a lot more sense to do this as opposed to setting up plugins on the tracks and synths and returns and all that stuff. And then if you really want to save your computer processing, if you have a lot of this going on, you can click the render button and it'll actually render that to the audio itself, so you don't have to keep running that plugin every time it comes up. You can always unrender it later to adjust the settings, but it's a neat thing to do if you have huge sessions where you have lots and lots of event-based effects going on. It's a very, very cool thing to do. Okay, that's it for this video. Hope that helped you learn a little bit more about what to do with the inspector window, and hope you're having fun in Studio One. See you in the next video.